One of the important things to understand about Calvinism is that to Calvinists, the supreme attribute of God that really informs all others is sovereignty, power. That is the chief attribute of God. Not love, nothing else. Sovereignty. That is the supreme act of God, or the supreme expression of who God is, as we experience it. And really the ultimate expression of sovereignty is unmerited grace. Has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with your goodness. It has nothing to do with your merits. It has nothing to do with anything that you can or can't do, because the choice was made before you even existed. There's this idea of this eternal decree of God that preceded all time and space, like that God chose who was elect and who wasn't. Why? Because he's sovereign, because he's powerful, all-powerful, and he can. That choice had nothing to do with love. It had nothing to do with some redeeming plan that would ultimately set all things right. It was nothing about that. It was all just about an act of will, sovereign will, and really flows out from this philosophy of voluntarism, which is far too complex to get into now. But it's this idea that it's just a sheer exercise of power and will, which Calvinists call sovereignty. And to the elect, they love God and he loves them. To the reprobate, they hate God and he hates them. But ultimately, you're completely reprobate and degenerate and worthy of hatred anyway. So if you're one of the elect, it's a wonderful thing that God chooses to love you in spite of that. But to the reprobate, you're getting just what you deserve. So there's ultimately kind of a twisted logic there of God is not love in his nature. He's only love to certain people, but to others, he's not. He's hatred. But what he ultimately is in his core being is sovereignty, power, sheer will. And there's nothing you can do about that. So it was both a challenge and a relief to me to discover the Catholic Church has a different perspective, a different belief about who God is and his nature. I think it was very difficult, and it took me a long time to shed a lot of those beliefs and to unlearn them and to relearn a new way of being. I think there was a long time where even on paper I didn't believe those things anymore, and yet experientially and in my heart I still was living in that place of anxiety and scrupulosity and fear. But what really changed things for me was just reading a lot of the saints' writings and reading a lot of, like we mentioned earlier, G.K. Chesterton, and how his joyful, delightful way of seeing the world really changed my lenses. But it took time. I won't say it was always easy, but the idea St. John says, that God is love, and ultimately that is what his being is. And if you think about the nature of the Trinity, is loving relationship. That is at the heart of being, at the heart of existence, is loving relationship. Before time and space existed, there was Father, Son, and Holy Spirit in communion of love together. God is love. And so to take that into the practice of the faith, and again, with the Eucharist is an ultimate sacrifice of love repeated every Sunday, or made present for us every Sunday sacramentally. And we're being kind of drawn into this Trinitarian community of love through our communion with the Son, and draws us into communion with the Father and the Holy Spirit. Love is at the heart of Catholic worship. Love is at the heart of the Catholic life. And then as we receive love, as Christ said, as you have received, freely give. And so then once we have received the love of God in the Eucharist and in the Mass, then we go forth, the Mass is ended, and we bring that love to the world. And that to me is the Catholic life.